Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, 2025, emerges as one of the most ambitious, sprawling, and tonally daring films of the decade. A 162-minute odyssey that fuses action spectacle, biting political satire, absurdist comedy, and intimate family drama into a single, frequently disorienting, but undeniably hypnotic whole. Loosely adapting Thomas Pynchon's 1990 novel Vineland, while reworking it into something both contemporary and deeply reflective of the fractured anxieties of our current cultural moment. The film opens with a jarring sequence in which French 75, a revolutionary collective led by the magnetic Perfidia Beverly Hills, Teyana Taylor, in a breakthrough performance that oscillates between ferocious intensity and startling vulnerability, and her partner Bob, Leonardo DiCaprio, once again disappearing into a role that requires him to be both ruggedly charismatic and painfully weary. Storm a U.S.-Mexico border processing facility in a sequence that is equal parts chaotic action set piece, ideological theater, and absurdist spectacle, introducing at once the central antagonistic presence of Sean Penn's Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw, a grotesquely racist and militaristic figure who becomes obsessed with perfidia after being publicly humiliated during the attack, an obsession that sets into motion much of the narrative's momentum and thematic weight. From here, Anderson destabilizes the expectations of a linear revolutionary narrative by folding in the personal and domestic, as Perfidia finds herself pregnant, torn between the demands of radical politics and the fragile beginnings of family life. A tension that comes to a head after a botched robbery leads to her imprisonment, Bob's retreat into a fugitive underground existence, and the splintering of French 75 as an organization, a fracture that symbolizes the film's preoccupation with memory, disconnection, and the difficulty of sustaining revolutionary energy across time. 16 years later, the story reorients itself around Willa, played with striking depth by newcomer Chase Infinity, the teenage daughter caught between the fractured legacy of her parents and the looming menace of Lockjaw, who has reemerged with greater institutional power and an unrelenting obsession with exacting revenge, while Bob, now a single father worn down by years of exile and secrecy, attempts to protect Willa while grappling with his own guilt, disillusionment, and unresolved love for Perfidia, who herself has evolved into a figure both haunted and hardened by the compromises of the past. Anderson stages this generational conflict as both an intimate family drama and an allegorical struggle over memory, ideology, and legacy, weaving through extended sequences of chases, conspiracies, and ideological debates that are often punctuated by moments of absurdist comedy, such as a recurring gag involving forgotten passwords that operates both as a literal obstacle for the characters and as a metaphor for the erosion of revolutionary memory. The difficulty of holding onto the codes, literal, emotional, political, that tether movements and individuals to their ideals. Throughout, the film's tonal fluidity is its greatest strength and its greatest risk, as Anderson veers from tense, violent set pieces to surreal satire and then to hushed, emotionally naked conversations between father and daughter, producing a viewing experience that some critics have described as uneven or overstuffed, but which also reflects the messy, contradictory texture of political struggle and personal survival. Thematically, the film operates on several levels at once. It is a story about revolution versus family, about the impossibility of reconciling the demand for systemic change with the equally urgent demand of nurturing those closest to us. It is a story about generational inheritance, as Willa wrestles with the legacy of parents whose choices have defined her life in absentia, raising questions about whether the children of revolutionaries are doomed to repeat their struggles or to forge something new. It is a story about obsession and control, as Lockjaw's pursuit of Perfidia and her family reveals the ways in which political authority often masks personal insecurity with Penn's grotesque yet terrifying performance, and it is a story about chaos and continuity, about the idea that life under such conditions is never neatly resolved, but always, as the title suggests, one battle after another, a continuous cycle of resistance, repression, adaptation, and survival. Visually, the film is stunning, with Michael Bauman's cinematography alternating between wide shots of desolate border landscapes that underscore the loneliness of exile and claustrophobic interiors that amplify the suffocating presence of surveillance and control, while Johnny Greenwood's score underpins the shifts in tone with a composition that moves from minimalist unease to full orchestral chaos, reinforcing Anderson's willingness to embrace tonal whiplash as a deliberate, artistic choice rather than a flaw. Performances across the board elevate the material. DiCaprio gives one of his most layered portrayals in years. A man who is at once ideologically committed and emotionally broken, capable of both tenderness and violence, and Penn is both horrifying and darkly hilarious as Lockjaw, a figure whose cartoonish excess is tempered by the genuine menace he radiates. While Chase Infinity brings authenticity and emotional gravity to Willa, who becomes the true heart of the narrative, the character around whom questions of legacy, choice, and survival coalesce. Critics have responded with both awe and reservation, while others have pointed out that its tonal leaps and crowded narrative risk diluting the emotional core, with some subplots feeling underdeveloped and certain ideological caricatures sketched too broadly to achieve real depth. Yet even these criticisms underline the film's ambition, its attempt to capture not just a story but a feeling. The sense that modern political life is simultaneously absurd, terrifying, exhausting, and deeply human. Anderson's decision to adapt Pynchon, long considered unfilmable, seems less about fidelity to the source text than about channeling its spirit of paranoia, satire, and anarchic energy into a cinematic form that speaks directly to contemporary concerns. From immigration and surveillance to polarization and generational inheritance, making the film feel uncannily timely despite its roots in a novel over 3 decades old. Indeed, one of the film's most striking qualities is its ability to resonate with present anxieties, where Lockjaw embodies authoritarian obsession, Perfidia embodies the recklessness and allure of revolution, Bob embodies the compromises and burdens of survival, and Willa embodies the possibility and the weight of the future. In this sense, One Battle After Another functions both as a work of entertainment, with spectacular set pieces and biting humor, and as a work of cultural reflection, a mirror held up to a world in which battles, personal, ideological, generational, never end but only transform. The film's length and density make it a demanding watch, and it is not without flaws, but its audacity, emotional depth, and sheer cinematic craft mark it as one of Anderson's most significant achievements. A film that, like the battles it portrays, lingers long after it ends, refusing neat resolution and instead insisting on the messy, continuous, contradictory nature of both political struggle and human connection.